Urbanization and the growth of cities. Urbanization. Urbanization has had a long-run settlement history. Like hunter and gatherers, which developed agricultural history by making villages and finding new ways for planting new crops like corn and other vegetables, as well as domesticating animals like horses, cows, dogs, etc. that can be provide labor. Then, modernized urbanization had occurred in the 1800s and going into present time, which was an acceleration in the urban/rural balance. Use of resources. Water provided transportation, which was shipment of merchandise and goods to them, also freshwater source and a creation of energy. The Erie Canal was created to provide water resources and transportation to where it exists. Minnesota Lake Superior region, which had yielded some iron ore by the 1850s, contributed to the rich deposits of the Mississippi Range. Industrial water use includes water used for fabrication, processing, washing, and cooling, and also includes water used by smelting facilities, petroleum refineries, and industries producing chemical products, food, and paper products. Industrial water use has declined to 24% since 1985 and in 2000 was at the lowest level since reporting during beginning in the 1950. Coal was needed in vast quantities for the Industrial Revolution. Coal became a powerhouse by the 1800s. People used coal to manufacture goods and to power steamships like in-railroad engines. By the American Civil War, people also used coal to make iron and steel. And by the end of the 1800s, people used coal to make electricity. When America entered the 1900s, coal was the energy mainstay for the nation's businesses and industries. Lumber is used for building things like houses, barns, sheds, and many other things. Fossil fuels are used worldwide and is used for to power whole cities. Finding sites for cities. Confluence is the meeting of two or more bodies of water. It usually refers to the point of where two streams flow together, merging into a single stream. It can be where a contributory joins a large river called the main stem, or where two streams meet to become the source of a river of a new name, such as the confluence of Bell Creek and the Arroyo Calabasas forming the Los Angeles River. In a borderer sense, the merging of any two streams is a confluence. The term is also used to describe the meeting of tidal or other non-riverine bodies of water, such as the two canals or a canal in a lake. A 1-mile, 1.6-kilometer portion of the Industrial Canal in New Orleans accommodates the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway and the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet Canal. Therefore, those three waterways are confluent there. Protected harbor is where the land protects boats from big waves. Head of navigation is the furthest point upriver that a boat or ship can travel from to the Mouse River, from the Mouse River. Defensive sites were important in the siting of several cities. U-shaped bends like New Orleans, which is an example of a defensive site. Sites on the high grounds equal easy to defend. The village in Black River Bay, southwest of the mouth of the Black River on Lake Ontario, is a protected harbor that was critical in the founding of the early history of the village. Much of the Lake Ontario was gouted out of rock by glaciers. There were few protected harbors on the south shores deep enough for major shipping in the early 19th century. Types of cities. Market cities are where most of the were sold. Market cities emerged from the market revolution, which emerged from the antebellum era. The revolution transformed a subsistence economy of scattered farms and tiny workshops into a national network of industry and commerce. Industrial cities emerged from the full development of industrial capitalism in the coronation states of the late 18th century world system. The urban cultural role fit well with the capitalist economy order that came to dominate all other social institutions. Driven by a wealth of natural resources, inventive minds, and a risk-taking industrialists, the nation's industries grew dramatically during the late 1800s. As industries grew, so did towns and small cities in which they were located. Needing labor, transportation, housing, power, and so on, small cities and towns became booming industrial centers with thousands of workers. Trading cities are where exports and imports occur. This is the Solvay process company's work in Syracuse, which is an example of an industrial city. Structure of cities. Government passes laws to plan and provide environmental sound cities, considering that people should not live in polluted or unsafe areas. Government also encourages private investment in sustainable industries like solar energy, which President Carter helped establish through establishing the Department of Energy. Also, they encourage investment in public transportation and water reclamation with financial rewards. Government, with private help, provides services that will improve the quality of life. The government created new jobs, especially during hard times like the Great Depression. Programs were made like Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, Civil Works Administration, CWA, Public Works Administration, PWA, and Works Progress Administration, WPA, which were part of the New Deal. Resources help stabilize the economy. Resources help create industry. Many manufactured goods can be produced by using coal, fossil fuels, as well as crops. Crops like cotton that helped boost the economy of the South during the late 1800s, which was characterized by the Industrial Revolution. The economy of a city helps stabilize the whole structure of a city. Growth of cities. Technological, technological change such as cars, trains, and planes led to the expanse growth within the city, as well as growth in the industry. For example, with the Henry Ford's production of the Model T that the had created the model for assembly line methods and mass production techniques. Big car production centers were established like Detroit, which was called Motor City. The use of trains opened the West for trading and settlement, as well as tying the economy of the West and East United States together, East being the manufacturing center and the West being the resource center and many ports used for exporting and importing. One of the most important railway systems was the Transcontinental Railroad. When planes were developed, trading was easier due to the ability to transport goods across much land and water. Wide use of cars led to highways and the movement of people outside the traditional city boundaries. Eisenhower's Interstate Highway Act began the federal funding for an interstate highway system. Growth of cities continued. The movement of people outside the traditional city boundaries caused for the development of suburbs during the 50s. Young couples in the post-World War II found that they had little choice as to where they would live after marriage. Because of the depression and the war, housing had taken a back seat. The cost of living in the city was too high. The solution was the development of new tracts and subdivisions on the outskirts of cities, far enough from the city so the land was cheap, but close enough so people could still shop and work in the cities. The first great suburb was Levittown, New York. Levitt's was a family company that adapted the assembly line to home building. To keep the price of homes low, the Levitt brothers used cheap materials and only a few different blueprints. Houses of suburbia were identical and constructed all at once, thus caused the development of the cookie-cutter homes. By 1960, as many people lived in the suburbs as lived in the cities. The suburbs also were made possible due to the new highway system that Eisenhower legislated and had created during the 1950s. Now, with everyone in the middle class owning a car and having a good job in the city, they could commute on these new highways and return home to the quiet of the suburbs. Growth of cities. Massive immigration. Chinese immigrants, the new immigrants from the southern and eastern Europe. The industrial movement also created a great demand for more workers. Massive immigration provided for this need and helped keep labor costs low. Demand for immigrant labor shot up with two major developments: the settlement of the American Midwest after the inauguration of the Erie Canal in 1825 and the related rise of the Port of New York, and the first stirrings of the industrial development in the United States, particularly in the textile production centered in New England. Suburbs in the 1950s increase in mobility contributed to the rise of motels, fast food restaurants, gasoline, gasoline stations, and most notably suburbs. Department stores like Macy's in New York and Marshall Field in Chicago also emerged. Immigration. Massive immigration provided cheaper light production methods through industrial manufacturing. It began a movement that almost all workers being farm workers to the vast majority now working in other jobs. People tended to live in the cities in large numbers. During the 1840s and 1850s, most of the immigrants were Irish. This was due to the potato famine that occurred in Ireland at the time, as well as German immigrants. During the 1880s through 1914, South and Eastern Europeans migrated to America for factory jobs. However, World War I and the Great Depression limited immigration. The 1920s quota system implemented to maintain Northern European immigration. Congress temporarily plugged the breach with the Emergency Quota Act of 1921. Newcomers from Europe was restricted in any given year to a definite quota which was set at 3% of the people of their nationality who had been living in the United States in 1910. The Immigration Act of 1924 replaced the emergency quota. It was a quota for foreigners that were cut from 3% to 2%. From that decade through the 1800s, about 15 million immigrants made their way to the United States, many choosing agriculture in the Midwest and Northeast, while others flocked to cities like New York, Pennsylvania, Boston, and Baltimore. A pushing and a pulling. Push and pull factors contributed to the mass immigration to America. Push factors, which are conditions that drive people to leave their homes. Examples are land scarce in home country, political ends or religious persecution, revolutions, environmental hardships, and poverty. Pull factors are conditions that attracted people to a new area. Examples are the promise for freedom, which is religious and political, hope for a new life, industry, jobs, land, and the belief of cities paved with gold. A classic example of a push factor that caused immigration was the drought that happened in the Great Plains during the Great Depression, known as the Dust Bowl. Many Okies, which were called, moved to California in search for new opportunities. The famous novelist John Steinbeck wrote, wrote about the Dust Bowl and the Grapes of Wrath, which was written in 1939. Modified by man. After settlers found a proper site to establish a city on, they modified or changed it to make it more suitable for their own needs. Some examples are clearing land for agriculture, building a house, building dams, seawalls or levees, etc. Basically anything you see that is not as it was without man touching it is modified. Humans adapted to the environment mostly culturally. Different cultures eat different foods and have different styles of clothing or home building based on their environments. The Hoover Dam was constructed between 1931 and 1936 during the Great Depression and was dedicated on September 30, 1935 by President Franklin Roosevelt. Its construction was the result of a massive effort involving thousands of workers and caused over 100 lives. The dam was controversially named in honor of President Herbert Hoover. The dam controls floods, provides irrigation water, and produces hydroelectric power. Another example is part of Lower Manhattan was created to expand the limited land space and docks. Also, New Orleans created levees to below their sea level city so that below sea level city could survive. Those levees played a key role in the survival of hundreds of people during the Hurricane Katrina. Man has also used explosives to blow up land masses to construct bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge. Urban sprawl. Urban sprawl, also known as suburban sprawl, is a multifaceted concept which includes the spreading outwards of a city and its suburbs to the outskirts to low density and auto-dependent development of rural land, high segregation of uses like stores and residential, and various design features that encourage car dependency. Urban sprawl results in high results in a high car dependency, inadequate facilities like cultural, emergency, health, and so forth. Low public support for sprawl, high person industrial costs, inefficient street layouts, inflated costs for public transportation, lost time and productivity for commuting, high levels of racial and social economic segregation, low diversity of housing and business types, high rates of obesity, less space for conservation in parks, and high per capita use of energy, land, and water. Cities grew to form new communities within the new expanded city limits, like Hamburg and Brandon Crossing. Problems with rapid urban growth. Rapid urban growth strains the city's capacity to provide services such as energy, education, healthcare, transportation, sanitation, and physical security. The strains cause less revenue to have to spend. Therefore, many programs were created like Medicare, Medicaid, and the Department of Energy, created by President Carter, and the Department of Education, also created by President Carter. Also, it causes a widespread poverty. Massive sprawl contributes to the cookie-cutter homes as well as traffic caps of local resources, destroys open space, pollutes water and air, worsens the damage for floods, destroys agricultural land, parks, and open space, costs cities and countries millions of dollars for new water and sewer lines and new schools, increases in police and fire protection, and creates crowded cities in the suburbs and empty, crumbling schools in the center cities.